and you look into the forest, and it's super thick. You can't really see too well. It's very dark. And so tigers could be right there watching you and you don't even know.
That's so scary.
Which is a bit intimidating. And I kind of stopped and I thought I heard something to my left. And it would sound like something large moving through the forest. And it's kind of like the hair in the back of your neck sticks up.
Hey guys, welcome to the show. We're here with Dr. Eric Ash, tiger conservationist. And we got a great interview coming up for you. Let's just jump right into it.
Right.
Awesome. So you do spatial ecology.
Right. So that's tigers' relationship with their surroundings, their habitat, ecology, things like that.
Okay.
But I do a bit of everything.
Okay, I want to just dive right into it. So to start off, how did you start getting into working with tigers? Was it from a young age you were interested in tigers, or what led you to this career path working with tigers?
Right. So that's a bit of a long story. Are you familiar with the book Life of Pi?
I am.
So I was walking around a bookshop, saw the cover of Life of Pi, tiger jumping out. I thought, oh, that looks like an interesting book. I was in my teens at the end of high school and read the book, loved it, got really interested in tigers, and I started learning more about them. And I ended up going to a zoo and I sort of met a tiger behind a fence. And I knew how to say hello in tiger language. It's called a chuff or Proustan. And so I said hello to this tiger in tiger language, and the tiger chuffed back and said hello back. And so that blew my mind at the time. And it was almost like a switch had gone off. And I just was set on a path. I wanted to learn more about tigers, and I learned, unfortunately, how endangered they are, and how they could potentially go extinct. And I wanted to do something about it. So I ended up going to university, studying environmental studies, and eventually got my PhD at the University of Oxford. And now I'm here with you.
Amazing. And we're happy to have you here. So I want to ask you, you've worked with tigers in the wild for years now.
Mm-hmm.
Are there specific traits or behaviors that you find tigers in the wild have as opposed to tigers in captivity, whether at a zoo or, just, I'm thinking off the top of my head, like someone like Tiger King who just keeps them in cages. What are the behavioral differences that you find? And are there any signs in the wild that a tiger does that, you know to kind of back away, it's going to start to attack immediately? I know that's a very loaded question, but just want to know your thoughts there. Just on behavior. We'll start with behavior.
Yeah. So in terms of tiger behavior, tigers in captivity are going to be pretty similar to tigers in the wild. They both have the same tiger programming. Tigers in the wild obviously are going to be a lot more, probably a lot smarter, because they're just challenged to have to find prey in order to survive, really. Whereas in captivity, they're not problem solving as much. But both will have the same behavior. So they'll essentially have a territory, and they'll mark that territory with scent in order to sort of stake their claim to where they are. And that's in captivity as well. They'll walk around the enclosure, mark certain spaces. In the wild, their territories are obviously a lot larger.
Right.
They'll patrol those territories. They'll scent mark using a very strong scent. And that's basically a signal to other tigers, hey, this is my territory, keep out. Or, hey, if you're a tiger of the opposite sex, hey, maybe we can hook up, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's sort of tiger social media. That's a big part of tiger social life because they are solitary.
Right.
But yeah, they're generally similar between captivity and the wild. The wild tigers tend to be a little bit smarter just because they have to figure out how to find food.
Right, kind of fend for themselves. I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's interesting. You say they mark their territory, they're solitary. So hypothetically, one tiger smells that another tiger has marked their territory and decides, you know what, I want to be here anyways. Is it just a fight to the death, or is it kind of, they play this game of like chicken to see who's going to go first? Like, how does that work?
So it's interesting. You see tigers, and they are an apex predator. They have all the tools needed to take down very large prey. They're very strong, very dangerous. But this tiger behavior of patrolling their territories, scent marking, roaring to let other tigers know about territory as well, that's to prevent conflict, because conflict is very costly.
Right.
If two tigers meet up and they fight, they have such dangerous tools at their disposal, very sharp teeth, very sharp claws, that they could potentially injure each other and undermine their ability to survive. So these are all signals to prevent conflict, to say, hey, this is my territory, keep out. If it gets to the point where maybe another tiger comes in, wants to challenge another, then there's a lot of, if they find each other, there's a lot of posturing, there's a lot of growling. There's a lot of communication that occurs before they actually fight.
Right.
So ideally, for a tiger, they want to show how strong they are, but not actually get into a fight. And when they do get into a fight, it is actually pretty impressive. It's pretty terrifying. And they could kill each other, they could severely injure each other. So it's definitely a sight to behold. But it's a process of trying to prevent conflict, because that could be potentially very costly for them.
Right. I mean, if not deadly, like you said, they're still kind of out in the wild. They got to fend for themselves, and they got these gashes or these injuries. It's hard to do so. I know you did some work with the Freeland. Is it the Freeland Agency?
Freeland Foundation.
Freeland Foundation. Amazing. Yeah. And you were planting cameras in tiger territory. I mean, to me, that's terrifying. Just knowing that you're in the territory where tigers are. Given that they are territorial, obviously they mark their scent. How did you approach that work? I mean, obviously they didn't just say, here's a camera, go figure it out. You're obviously trained, but I just can't imagine like the adrenaline and at least for me personally, I'll speak from personal experience. I'm sure you're much more comfortable around tigers than I would be. But yeah, can you speak on that a little bit and the reasoning for it as well, of course, but I more so just want to know your personal experience of just being in tiger territory to obviously learn more, but just what that was like.
Yeah, so my experience, especially first going into a forest with tigers for the first time, and seeing sign, my reaction would be similar to yours. Like, oh my gosh, there's actually tigers here.
Like even just thinking about it, I'm like getting a little...
and it's something that actually brings the forest alive a bit.
Yeah.
So you're in this forest and knowing tigers are there, it's just sort of, it puts in like this electric charge in the forest where, you never know what you're going to see if you walk down a trail.
Yeah.
So I was definitely nervous to start with, but imagine the first time you drive a car. Super nervous.
Right.
Like going on the highway for the first time. You're gripping the wheel.
Yeah.
And then eventually you just sort of get used to it.
Yeah.
I think people have the capacity to get used to very unusual situations. And you're like, oh, well, that's actually not that scary at all.
Right.
At some point. So over time, I was able to get used to it. And, you have to be aware of your surroundings, knowing that there are tigers there, but it doesn't occupy your mind at all times. I mean, I had a job to do, putting out cameras so we could learn more about tigers and help their conservation. But it just wasn't something I was thinking about all the time. And then you come across a tiger track, a fresh one, and you're like, oh man, there's actually tigers around here.
Right.
And that having that awareness and that appreciation for what is there, I think is a key tool for preventing any kind of negative encounter.
Right.
In our case, working in Thailand, the tigers generally don't like to stick around when people are around. If they hear people, they're generally
taken off.
Yeah, they're taken off. They hear people ahead of time. And so they don't want anything to do with people. People are bad news for tigers. So they don't want to stick around. Thankfully, that was in our favor, but we definitely had some close calls before.
Okay, so speaking on that, close calls, that's my next question is, do you have any close encounters with tigers? When you see a tiger in the wild, we've done videos about tiger attacks and what not to do. You shouldn't run, you shouldn't climb a tree, but are there certain things that you would recommend, you're walking down a trail, let's just say you're vacation in Thailand and you just go to a national park and you see a sign for tigers and you're like, oh, this is cool. Maybe I'll see some wildlife, I don't know. You see a tiger, what's your next move?
Jeez. So the problem is, I don't know how many close calls I've had.
Right.
Because once you're in the forest, it's so thick that you could be on a trail and you look into the forest and it's super thick. You can't really see too well. It's very dark. And so tigers could be right there watching you. You don't even know.
That's so scary.
Which is a bit intimidating. I have heard tigers roaring at night while camping in the forest, getting closer and closer and closer. Walking down a trail that we knew, or just off the trail, so it got louder and louder and louder, and then quieter and quieter and quieter. He was just announcing his territory, which makes you a little bit nervous, but we didn't we weren't too worried about him coming into camp. Just
Right.
I guess because he probably wouldn't want to be around us. Another instance, which I was convinced was a close encounter. I was walking down a trail that I'd gone down before. I'd forgotten something at a spot where we previously put a camera. So racing back to this previous spot, nothing out of the ordinary. And I kind of stopped and I thought I heard something to my left. And it sounded like something large moving through the forest. And it was kind of like the hair on the back of your neck sticks up. I'm like, what is that? And then I tried to look. I couldn't really see. And so I was probably just imagining it. Walk further down the trail just a little bit, and then I get hit with this wave of scent, this musky scent. And it's unmistakable if you've smelled it before. And that's a tiger that had marked its territory. And I was convinced the tiger had heard us and just slipped right out of view and was just watching us. And we checked the cameras the next month and we knew there was a tiger in that area around that time. So that was a bit nerve-wracking.
Yeah. So in a situation like that, is it just like instinct takes over? Are you like, I just got to keep calm and just do what I'm here to do and just be aware of my surroundings? Like,
Right.
What's kind of going through your mind at that point, knowing that somewhere relatively close based off that smell, there is this I'll call it like a beast. Like, these things are big, they're powerful, they're fast. I mean, how you handling that?
So I think the fact that I didn't see it kind of reassured me a bit.
Yeah.
Because I imagine a tiger wouldn't stick around. And
Right.
so I was a bit more aware of the potential risk,
Yeah.
but I wasn't super paranoid about it. I just said, okay, well, we still have a job to do. Just
Right.
obviously keep an awareness of your surroundings. And that's a good idea if you're
Anyway,
in
really,
any kind of
right?
forest in general and potentially encountering wildlife, just being aware of your surroundings and yeah, having that awareness. So it was a little bit nerve-wracking, but I guess it's just, you had that all the time in the forest. You're always encountering wildlife and yeah, you just sort of get used to it and take it as it comes, really.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, well, on that note, encountering wildlife, did you have, aside from tigers, did you have any crazy encounters with other animals? I know before we started, we were talking about, so there's some snakes that, you know, you've never been bitten, luckily, but
Yeah,
there are
thankfully.
snakes all over the forest. And were there any close calls you had, or did you see any wildlife that you were like, wow, that's too close for comfort for me?
Right. So when I was in the forest, it's interesting. There was tigers in the forest. The rangers there that we worked with to set these camera traps spent a lot of time in the forest. They were not afraid of tigers so much as they were afraid of bears or elephants. Again, the tigers would disappear from view if they heard them. They didn't see them very often, even though they were there. But bears and elephants, less afraid of people and more likely to sort of posture and be more aggressive and challenge people. So we heard elephants all the time. We saw bears pretty regularly. Bear came into our camp when we were camping overnight and had to shout and scare it away. So tigers weren't actually the biggest fear, and elephants as well. They're Asian elephants, huge, really intimidating, and they're smart as well. And so if they feel like people are a threat, they're not afraid to charge. And so I was very nervous about that. Had close encounters in terms of hearing elephants right up the trail and making a big racket, and trying to set up the camera as quickly as possible and just getting out of there. So elephants, bears. I had weird luck with snakes. So I would, go to pick up my bag and there would be, a little Russell's viper or something wrapped around the strap, or ranger tapping me on the shoulder. He's like, "Oh, you just stepped over a Malayan pit viper back there." And it's like, you didn't even see it. And I had spent a lot of time in the forest, and I thought I had, a good search image for these kinds of things, but apparently not. But I didn't get bitten, thankfully. But I should have a lot.
I mean, that's just, so all these experiences, these close encounters with the snakes and seeing elephants, and you still just have this fire to work in tiger conservation and really learn more about them, right? Is there, I mean, obviously aside from increasing their population, what is it that keeps the fire going for you, that you want to keep working in this field and you're so passionate about it?
It's interesting. I volunteered and worked with tigers in captivity, and I had the experience out in the wild. And I'm very familiar with tigers, but it hasn't really gotten old for me. I think I see a tiger and I see something that's absolutely magnificent, beautiful. And so for me, if I were to try to explain it, I think for all we know, Earth is the only place in the universe that has life. And I think tigers are probably the epitome of the beauty and ferocity and just the sublime wonder of nature. And I think that's something that is worth protecting. I think if we can't protect tigers, like what can we protect, right?
Right.
So it's important for me that if I care and I have this love and affinity for tigers, that I want to be able to work to help them as much as possible. And yeah, just the same passion that I had when I first met a tiger for the first time, that's still there, and I want to continue. I just want to contribute as much as possible.
That's beautiful. That's great. No,
Thank you.
We need more people like that, 'cause their numbers are dwindling.
I heard someone refer to say, like, if tigers went extinct, it'd be like a night sky without stars. So it'd feel very empty.
Yeah.
And if we can't protect tigers, then what the heck are we able to protect? Really?
Yeah. I'm at a loss for words here. So on that note, there are, I want to say it's a known fact, I don't know if people are aware of this, but there are more tigers in captivity than there are in the wild. Can you talk a bit about that? I mean, how does that even happen? Obviously they're naturally in the wild, and then at some point, I don't even know, I guess people started taking baby tigers away from, and I know poaching's a big issue, but I mean, how does a wild animal go from having larger numbers in captivity than out in the wild?
So there's two factors behind that. One is the appeal of tigers kind of working against them in that sense, where people understandably want to see tigers. And so tigers have been in captivity for millennia. People want to see them, and so that's always been, as soon as people knew tigers existed. So in ancient Rome, they had tigers brought in from Asia, and so there was this wonder associated with them. So it's been going on for ages and ages. There's also the intention of ensuring that we don't have all of our eggs in one basket. So if tigers were to go extinct in the wild, we at least have representation in captivity, so we could potentially reintroduce them.
Right.
That's not the case with all tigers in captivity. You do have formal breeding programs and conservation programs in captivity. In the majority of cases, tigers in captivity are there just for education or even for pets.
Right.
It depends on where you're looking. But yeah, where people are able to have tigers as pets, someplace in the United States, it's a huge draw for people to have it, even though they may misunderstand how difficult it is to keep a tiger in captivity. But there are some zoos that do really good conservation work and education work. And obviously, for me, being able to see a tiger in person was a remarkable experience, and it really inspired me.
Right.
The other side of that is tigers have lost ground, especially in the past 100 years.
Right.
Conversion of habitat, loss of their prey, and then, of course, poaching for tigers themselves, for their body parts, for use in traditional medicine. Up until recent decades, tigers were hunted for sport. And so over the past 100 years, tigers have declined and declined and declined. So there's the current estimates, about 4,500 individuals, give or take about 1,000. We don't know exactly because tigers are very difficult to count in the wild.
Right.
But yeah, those are some of the main factors that have driven tigers to such low numbers.
Yeah, it's awful. It's just sad, I actually, this morning I was watching a video you did talking about how a tiger's stripes are like a fingerprint.
Right.
and that's how you kind of identify different tigers. Your time working with it was the Freeland Foundation,
Right. Yeah.
you know, were you able to just see a tiger stripes and be like, oh, that's this tiger? Like immediately right away you could tell? Or was it, you know, because like a fingerprint, you see someone's fingerprint and you're like, that looks similar to this fingerprint. Are there stripes so different that immediately you could tell it's a different tiger? Or do you have to really pay attention to the slightest detail to be like, oh, that's this tiger, this one comes by the camera all the time? You know, what's that process like to determine, I guess, different tigers that you're seeing?
So when I would look at camera trap images, we would generally know which tigers were in certain areas.
Yeah.
And so we'd already have an idea of kind of what to expect. But tigers, they would have certain patterns that maybe look like certain shapes. So we had one tiger that had almost like a leaf pattern. One had a number 2 on its flank. And so there were certain characteristics where we would see it and be like, oh, okay, that's this one.
Right.
Obviously, if we're doing, you know, cataloging images of who we're seeing from the camera trap images, we would obviously take a bit more care to identify the individual. So we can be reasonably sure. But even just pulling out a camera in the middle of the forest and popping the SD card in and taking a look, it's like, oh yeah, that's female number 3, that's male number 2. And so we kind of got familiar with who was in the area and the sort of the tiger politics of the different territories, and oh, this one's come in here and he got kicked out, they got into a fight. And so we had enough cameras in the forest to be able to understand that.
Yeah.
And then all the data we collected, obviously we put that into some analysis so we could estimate their population.
Right.
What kind of habitat did they like? What kind of prey are they associated with? How large the territories are? All this information that really wasn't known before. And so that's information that could then be used to develop plans to better protect them. But yeah, it was interesting. They had very unique patterns. And a lot of them did look pretty similar. Sometimes it was just stripes, but you had some that were, you know, had loop-de-loops or something like that.
Right, like easily identifiable, like, oh, that's definitely this one kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay, speaking on, you literally just said it, conserve and then better. What was the language they used? Conserve and then better?
So developing management plans using the information that we got from our camera traps to, I guess, increase the understanding of the local population and develop management plans to better protect them, essentially.
So what does that look like, developing management plans? What specifically, I guess, we could tell our audience, you know, the steps that are taken to help continue to grow the tiger population? Because it has grown in, I want to say, recent years, maybe even recent decades. It's been starting to go up. So what, I guess, actionable things have you guys been doing, you and the people that you work with at this agency, and as well as when you're working at Oxford University, was it?
Yeah.
What actionable things have you guys been doing to help increase the population?
Right. So I guess starting in Thailand, sort of in situ, where we were working, we would work with the Department of National Parks in Thailand. So it essentially wasn't our protected areas. We were trying to help local managers understand what is in their national parks, because often they don't necessarily have the tools to do that kind of work. So our goal was to help provide equipment and training and things like that, and that data, so they could understand really what they're working with, and develop sort of local plans of, you know, which areas are the most important to patrol, breeding areas, that kind of thing. What kind of prey is important for them. So if there's prey being targeted for poaching, they have an understanding of that. So what we would do, the camera trapping that we did in Thailand, that was part of a larger program, which the camera trapping informed these different aspects of conservation project that we were working on. So we were trying to help build local capacity for wildlife monitoring, which is what we were doing, ranger training as well. So how to conduct patrols, how to collect information about wildlife and about potential threats, and community outreach. So people in local communities that live with these species, understanding sort of their level of support for conservation, and trying to help build local capacity for teaching people about the wildlife that they're living with. And potentially developing alternative livelihoods. So rather than cutting down the forest, providing opportunities for them to have something that's more ecologically friendly, that kind of thing. So it was part of a greater program. And so when I went to Oxford, essentially we had this a lot of data, but it really hadn't been utilized very broadly. So the landscape we were working in, people didn't really have an understanding about tigers in that landscape. It was sort of, I wouldn't say written off, but it wasn't a big focus for different conservation groups because really people didn't think there was a whole lot there.
Right.
So we set camera traps and we started finding a few tigers and more tigers and more tigers, and we found that they were breeding. And so all of a sudden, this was potentially one of the most important tiger landscapes remaining in Southeast Asia.
Yeah.
Where they primarily had been wiped out. And so my goal when I was doing the academic side was to delve into the data, estimate their population, associations with certain habitat, certain prey, and understand their ability to recover in the future. So say protection does improve, they're able to breed and increase their population. Where can they go? Can they utilize existing habitat?
Right.
Or are they trapped where they are? These kinds of long-term questions I was looking at to provide sort of a more broad scale or bigger picture look at the context for this tiger population and conservation prospects for Southeast Asia more broadly, really.
Okay, well, it's good to know that, there's people like yourself having these conversations for long-term conservation. I know for a while they still they're endangered, or
Yes.
they're still endangered. What is the...
So I would say the estimated number for the number of individuals for tigers has increased. Hesitant to say that the population has increased. It certainly has increased in certain areas, but because tigers are so elusive,
Right.
it's very difficult to really confidently say this is the number of tigers left in the wild.
Right.
So usually there's a bit of a range for the estimate.
Like give or take.
Yeah,
plus,
and
minus.
so
Okay.
subsequent estimates could change over time, but could still lie within that range.
Right.
So not sure entirely if the population's going up or down, but there are a lot of positive stories. There are cases where populations are increasing in certain areas, like Nepal, Russian Far East, Bhutan, some places in India.
Yeah.
And so there are some success stories. On the other side of the coin, you have places like Southeast Asia, which have countries that have lost tigers completely.
Right.
So Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam, all their tigers have been wiped out. And so you now really have two countries, Myanmar and Thailand, for this Indo-Chinese subspecies of tiger. They're the only countries left that have tigers.
Right.
So the main issue with that is once you lose tigers from a certain area, it's very difficult to bring them back. So where tigers have been extirpated, where they're extinct, you start to have the erosion of systems for protection and political will and community support. So even if you were able to reintroduce tigers into the area, you potentially still have the factors that led to their extirpation still there.
Right.
And it's almost like if you have a shipwreck, your ship sinks, and people are in lifeboats. If maybe one lifeboat springs a leak and you have people moving into another one, you have fewer and fewer lifeboats, that leaves the people on those boats more vulnerable to certain kinds of catastrophes. So maybe a rogue wave or something like that.
Right.
And so ultimately the global population of tigers is more vulnerable just because they have fewer and fewer places to live. So they're more vulnerable to potential catastrophe or a loss in political will to protect them, things like that. So we want to make sure that tigers are protected where they still occur.
Right.
And that breeding populations are protected. So habitat that's connected can be repopulated naturally.
Right. So talking about reintroducing tiger populations to, I guess, areas where they were once native, but now they're extinct, what does that look like? This might sound silly, but
No, not so.
I don't think it's as simple as literally you just take a tiger out of a cage, open it, let it run in the forest, and say, all right, you're home now. What does it actually look like to try, I guess, to reintroduce a tiger to a land that they used to normally call home. And I guess it's a two-part question. What does that look like? And B, how do you know it's successful? If it's, I guess, let's say it was born in one country and I move it to another country that they used to be there, you want to reintroduce them to the land, would the tiger instinct naturally take over and they would just know, okay, this is my food, I'm an apex predator, this is what I hunt? Or they're like, well, normally I this, where my ancestors are from, I don't see any of that around here, so I got to adapt. Like, I guess, how do you know when they've successfully settled into, I guess, a new habitat of where tigers used to live, but then now they've been extinct, but you want to reintroduce them? I know it's a very long-winded question, so I could ask again if you need me to clarify.
No. It's, no, that makes sense. So there's a bit of confusion in regards to the role of tigers in captivity. There are breeding programs that try to maintain the genetic diversity of tigers in captivity so they're not heavily inbred.
Yeah.
And potentially could be reintroduced into the wild in the future. But in most cases, it's cost prohibitive and a high amount of effort to introduce a tiger that was born in captivity into the wild. Tigers are large apex predators, and so they need to be able to hunt very large prey.
Yeah.
And that prey is very dangerous. It's very difficult to take down. Things like sambar deer or gaur, which is a wild bovid, can get up to 1,000 kilograms.
Wow.
So they're very dangerous. And normally in the wild, a mother will raise her cubs to be able to hunt these animals and be familiar with that kind of environment. Whereas in captivity, someone's just feeding a tiger certain types of food. And so it's not necessarily having that same kind of problem solving. And so you're right. It's not as simple as taking a tiger from captivity and plopping it down in the wild. There's also the genetic component to it. So a lot of tigers in captivity aren't managed for genetic diversity. So you have a lot of crossover between potential subspecies.
Right.
They're these kind of generic tigers that don't really belong to any kind of one subspecies. And so that's not very well tracked. And so there may not necessarily be representative of tigers that would occur in the wild. So that's another consideration. If you were to do a reintroduction project, you need to make sure they represent what would be in the wild genetically, that they would be able to hunt certain types of prey. So you might be looking at something like a soft release where you have them in an enclosure where they could learn how to hunt.
Interesting.
And then after a certain period of time, when you're confident in them being able to do that, release them out into the wild. You can have a radio collar or a satellite collar that you can use to track them. So in India, they've repopulated certain areas where tigers were wiped out from other tiger habitat, which is ideal because they already know how to hunt. Right. They already have a familiarity with the environment. And so that's a bit of a better alternative. And they've had some success with that. They've been able to repopulate certain areas like Panna National Park, which in the early 2000s had their tigers wiped out.
Right.
But there's a lot that is a factor in the success of those kinds of programs. It's very intensive. Obviously, if you're focusing on just a couple individuals and pouring all that effort into that, then it's really difficult to scale up. It's very expensive. And so if you have that option, or you have an option where tigers could potentially repopulate a certain area from a site where they're already breeding, it makes more sense to maintain connections between these protected areas so that they can recover more naturally.
Right.
So it's more of a last resort, a more expensive option to really introduce tigers where really there's no other option left.
Right.
But yeah, in terms of monitoring, usually, at least in the experience of India, they've been tracking these tigers, and some of them will wander around for a bit to get familiar with the environment. Some of them might just take off and disperse hundreds of kilometers away. Maybe there's something they don't like about the habitat.
Yeah.
Others can stick around and say, oh, this seems like a nice place with plenty of prey, plenty of protection, not disturbed by humans very much. And so they might start, their movement patterns might be centralized in a certain location, and so that they establish a territory that way, and they can find that out via radio collaring or satellite collaring.
Right.
So there has been a lot of research on India for that. But yeah, hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, no, I had no idea about the radio calling, so you could track them. I was like, how would you, like obviously you planted the cameras, and like maybe you see them on cameras, but what if they don't go past the camera? So the radio collar, that's what you called it?
Yeah.
Radio collar. It's very interesting.
Yeah, so it's basically like a large collar with a box on it, and researchers will use that to monitor tiger movements and look at associations with certain habitats. So, they prefer this kind of habitat.
Right.
It's also important to understand how tigers move through landscapes. So when you have, say, an island of a protected area in a sea of humanity, which is the case for a lot of tiger habitat, it's important to understand how tigers move through areas between protected areas. So what kind of forest are they using? What are the routes? Are two areas connected, or are they completely severed? That kind of thing. So that's an important aspect of tiger research moving forward, because tigers are becoming more isolated in these islands as human populations expand. So yeah, it's an important aspect to understand sort of how tigers are able to move between these protected areas and hopefully avoid conflict with people.
Well, on that note, as you were saying, humans are expanding into tiger territory and natural habitats. Mm-hmm. I do want to talk some survival tips. Hopefully everyone watching never has a run-in with a tiger in the wild. But in the off chance that you do, what is the number one thing you should do if you see a tiger in the wild? I know often we often tell people on the channel, with any animal attack, be aware of surroundings, stay calm.
Right.
Usually don't run, like 9 times out of 10, don't run. But unfortunately, I think sometimes in the moment that fight or flight comes in, where you see this thing that could maul you and rip you apart, and you probably want to run. Mm-hmm. What do you say is the number one thing you should do if you see a tiger in the wild?
So as people, we grew up with tigers as a species.
Yeah.
So we evolved with tigers, and we have a bit of a tumultuous relationship with tigers. There is something baked into our brain that fears tigers, that really triggers a fear response.
Really?
So being able to fight that and be calm, I think, is the most important thing.
Oh, you meant humans. I thought you were saying tigers are afraid of us.
No,
I was like, are you serious?
Tigers are, yeah. We're bad news for tigers.
That's what I thought you were saying. Like, tigers see us and they're afraid. And I'm like, I get that, because,
we are both afraid of each other. It's sort of the thing is like, oh, they're more afraid of us than we are of them.
Right.
We're both afraid of each other.
Right.
And so in that situation, usually a tiger's kind of trying to understand what the threat is, what the threat level is. Like, what is this thing? Am I safe? It'll probably communicate via growls or hisses, or basically don't come any closer.
Right.
So the first thing is obviously stay calm. Second thing is freeze. Don't make any sudden movements. Don't make direct eye contact. So in most species, just staring right at another animal is very challenging. It's very aggressive.
Right.
So avoiding direct eye contact wherever possible. And you said it before, it's not particularly surprising. Don't turn around and run. Because tigers are very fast. They will catch you.
Yeah.
And also, if you've ever played with a cat, you ever dangled a toy in front of a cat and maybe dragged it behind an object, and you see their eyes dilate.
Yeah.
Same thing with tigers. I see that with tigers in captivity. So they do have a chase instinct. So making sure you're not running, you're not activating that instinct is really important. And from there, you can kind of assess the situation. What's the tiger's body language? Is it staring directly at me? Is it tensed up? Is it relaxed? What is it doing? Is it growling at me? Is it roaring? What's the level of aggression?
Right.
And kind of gauge that in the situation as it comes. Generally backing away slowly, because you want to remove yourself from that situation if the tiger hasn't done that already. So just backing up slowly, seeing its response, and if it starts to get closer, making noise and making yourself look large, those kinds of things can help. Really, in those situations, it's very unpredictable. It depends on the circumstance.
Right.
So say you are just walking along a trail and you stumble upon a tiger with a kill. That window of the tiger assessing whether you're a threat or not is very narrow. Right. So a tiger can make a very split-second decision. That's a threat. Go right after it. If it's sees you coming, it might have more opportunity to really assess, and so it might not be as aggressive. But if you get closer, it might start to feel a little bit uncomfortable. You basically want to not corner it. You want to give tigers an opportunity to have that space, presenting yourself as not a threat, and generally trying to remove yourself as slowly as possible and not try and trigger any of those kinds of natural instincts.
Right. I mean, I know you said don't make eye contact, but obviously you don't want to expose your back. So is it kind of, I guess, with your peripherals to keep an eye on it? Because you don't want to look directly at it. You don't want to turn away from it. Is it kind of like looking down and trying to see what the tiger's doing as you're backing away slowly?
Yeah, so not maintaining like long eye contact for a long period of time.
Right.
Not just staring directly at it.
Right.
Maybe glancing to this side. And you'll see cats do this as well. So if you see two cats interact, usually they won't be staring directly at each other. Sort of the polite thing to do in cat language is to sort of look away and
side
maybe
eye a little
blink.
bit.
And just, kind of taking a look at it and making sure you're not really challenging it and not doing anything that might be perceived as a challenge. But it's difficult because tigers are very unpredictable, and it's up to the tiger whether or not you are perceived as a threat.
Right.
And so it's a difficult situation to be in. It's not one that I would necessarily want to be in, but.
So we're talking worst case scenario here, guys. Tiger perceives you as a threat, starts coming at you. What do? Do you just try to cover your neck and hope that it sees that you're not a threat and eventually it leaves? Do you try to fight with everything you got? What is the best case? And it could be like a situation by situation scenario. If you go to the ground and it scratches and then walks away, you're fine. If it doesn't, at some point maybe you fight back. What would you recommend based on your experience and what you know about tigers? Is there a tiger's coming towards you, do this, and there's no guarantees, but this is the best advice I can share with you?
If you are in a situation where it's quite aggressive and no other option, it's going to attack you.
Yeah.
Attacking back as much as possible is probably the right thing to do. Tigers are apex predators. They're used to very large, difficult to kill prey.
Yeah.
People are very easy for them to kill. 2.5 to 3 inch fangs, jaw pressure of 1,500 to 2,000 pounds. If a tiger really wants to get you, it's very, very difficult to find a way out of that situation. But as with any animal, trying to go after very sensitive areas, so eyes, nose, things like that, just trying to fight back as much as possible. In some situations, people that have witnessed tiger attacks trying to make a lot of noise, throwing things at it just to distract it long enough for someone to get up.
Right.
But in that situation, when you really have no other option, fighting back as much as possible and trying to go after parts that might disturb it enough to let you go is probably the way to go. But if you're in that situation, you really need luck on your side.
Right.
Because it's going to be very difficult to survive that.
Right.
They're used to taking down prey with very thick skin, really long claws.
Yeah.
Their bite force is really strong. And so if they really get you, then it's very difficult to...
Most likely game over.
Yeah.
Okay.
But hopefully no one watching is...
Yeah,
is gonna
hopefully
be
you're never in that situation, guys. On that note, I do want to touch a little bit on tiger attacks like Siegfried and Roy, the magicians in Vegas. I believe it was Roy that was bitten. But prior to that, are tigers, are they known to hunt humans? Would they ever actively go after a human being? Again, could be situational. Maybe they're in the forest and they haven't eaten for a few days and there's a group of people walking down a trail and they could see it as potential prey. To your point, apex predators, they would probably have a much easier time taking down a few humans than another animal that's maybe a little more trained to fight back. But would you say that tigers necessarily hunt humans, or is it more so just out of fear of they're a potential threat, I got to protect myself kind of thing? So surprisingly, tigers don't attack people very often, considering the number of people around tiger habitat. Right.
And the level of overlap in certain areas. So there's places in India where people are regularly entering tiger habitat to collect fodder for cattle. And for the amount of times that there is that crossover, tiger attacks are pretty rare. And when you do have tiger attacks, often it's a case of mistaken identity. It's just bad luck. Maybe they've stumbled on a kill, things like
Right.
that. Just these freak accidents, really. Tigers want to avoid people as much as possible, and they don't usually see people as prey. That's not really something that they do very often. It's kind of a misconception that tigers in the forest are always prowling around looking for anything.
Yeah, just want to kill the next thing they see. Yeah.
I mean, what does a tiger eat? A tiger eats whatever it wants, but humans generally aren't on the menu.
Right.
So it's quite rare for the amount of people that are living near tigers. So I don't know if we taste bad or what.
Yeah.
There are cases of man-eating in certain areas, but yeah, it's quite rare. It's very unusual for a tiger to get to that point. Usually in those cases, a tiger's either old or injured or sick. It might have damaged canines where it's not able to attack prey to the degree it once was able to. And even in those cases, it might go after livestock first or dogs first or things like that. It's so rare for tigers to attack people. But it does happen, and when it does happen, it's very unfortunate, and it's usually a consequence of tigers being injured or people encroaching into tiger habitat, just really bad luck.
Right. Maybe them feeling threatened or unsure of assessing the threat and just saying, I'm not going to take a chance, and that's what it is. Okay.
And you do have situations where tigers attack people, but they don't necessarily eat them. They're not necessarily man-eaters, and it's important to make that distinction because that changes how you address that situation. If a tiger's actively hunting people, that's a different situation compared to one where it's just a freak accident. And
right. Stumble upon it while it's trying to eat, or babies are around, or who knows, whatever reasons there could be.
Yeah.
Not sure how too familiar you are with the Roy Horn Siegfried and Roy attack. While he was on stage performing, there's varying accounts as to what happened. I believe Roy himself at the time said that he was having a stroke and the tiger was simply just trying to protect him. Other people said, no, it bit his neck, it was trying to kill him. Based on what you said, it seems like if the tiger wanted to kill somebody, it easily could. Have you seen do you know about the story? Have you seen the footage?
I'm aware of the story. I haven't seen the footage.
Yeah, okay. So just based on what I'm telling you, tiger grabbed him by the neck, dragged him off stage. As you said, 2 to 3 inch fangs. Could have easily, bitten down with that PSI. Do you think, in your professional opinion, that it was trying to hurt him? Or do you think he was just, saying oh, he's clearly injured, something's happened, I got to remove him from danger, there's all these people around. What would you say in a situation like that is potentially what's going through the tiger's mind?
It's really difficult to get into a tiger's mind. We anthropomorphize a lot and project a lot of our human emotions and experiences onto tigers.
I'm going to say right now, obviously, you don't know for certain what's going through his mind, but just in your professional opinion, just given the fact that, like you said, he easily could have just bitten down harder, it seems evident that the tiger knew not to bite down hard enough that, he would crush his neck, I guess.
I don't know. It's difficult to say. I don't really know enough about this situation to really make a very confident determination about
fair enough.
What happened or what went through the tiger's mind. But what I would say is you have these performers that have been around tigers for a long time, and this accident still occurred.
Right.
Tigers aren't domesticated. They aren't domesticated animals. They're not pets necessarily. They still have instinct, very hardwired into them. And it's very unpredictable working with a tiger because you don't know what might set off that instinct. Whether maybe you take a stumble and then all of a sudden its chase instinct kicks in.
Yeah.
And it's no longer seeing you as someone that it knows. Maybe it's just it clicks and it just goes after the other person. It's difficult to really fully be comfortable around tigers because they always have that opportunity to really
at any point just
flip the switch. I'm aware of people that have worked with tigers for a long time, and it's important to have that kind of respect and to understand the risk because tigers are so capable of rendering so much damage to people and to be unpredictable. A tiger could be completely calm one moment and then something bothers it. And tigers are like people. Sometimes they have bad days. You get
Right.
tigers that are they have a grumpy day. And maybe that's all it takes.
Right.
And you could be working with a tiger for years and years and just the wrong thing happens. And so there's always that risk when working with tigers directly. And so the tigers require a lot of respect and a bit of care. So it's you can't be as confident as you are knowing a tiger.
Right. Even like raising it from a cub, people think, oh, it's my baby. I mean, even in captivity, you know, he's probably the most infamous example, I should say, is the Tiger King. You know, raised all these tigers, and obviously that documentary exposed how awful the tiger trade is in the States and how a lot of them are treated. But it seems like some people, not just with tigers, I want to say we've covered a lot of different wild animals that are exotic pets, I should say. People think that they could domesticate these pets. They get them from a very young age and think they're domesticated the way like a cat or a dog is. But to your point, it's still a wild animal. You know, it's still capable of inflicting a lot of damage very quickly.
Yeah.
Which is why I have a lot of respect for what you do, because that's I going out there with the wild tigers, I would be shaking. Even thinking about it, I just get so.
I don't know. I think you could do a pretty good job.
One day,
you seem
maybe.
like a pretty confident person. So,
I am a survivalist.
if I can do it, anyone can really. So, but you bring up an interesting point, because you have certain misconceptions about tigers.
Yeah.
It's almost like two sides of the same coin, or two ends of a spectrum, where you have people that see tigers as these killing machines, these bloodthirsty monsters. If they're in the forest, they want to kill people, they want to kill anything that moves, and this very ferocious perception
King
of
of the
tigers.
jungle, you know.
That kind of thing. And it's very, I mean, tigers are capable, obviously, of being an apex predator and taking down huge prey and being really dangerous, and they deserve respect. But it doesn't tell the whole story. On the other side, I think maybe now we have so much media with tigers, and especially tigers on social media and people interacting with them, you can lose that respect and that sense of danger associated with tigers. So people just see, oh, this person has a pet tiger, and they look very affectionate and playing with them and stuff, and they're like, oh, maybe I could have a tiger. It's the other side of that spectrum, where it's forgetting that tigers are not domesticated and they're still very dangerous. And that provides a different biased view. Tigers are somewhere in between.
Right.
They're capable of extraordinary violence and ferocity, but they're also capable of seeming like they express affection. But tigers are complicated. They're very nuanced. It's difficult to get into a tiger's head. It's somewhere in between. And so having a healthy respect for tigers, I think, is important for anyone in close proximity to them.
Healthy respect and just distance, I think, is a good way of putting it, because you don't want to get too close to a tiger. I mean, maybe you do. I don't think I want to. But
it's even if you are, it's still quite dangerous. There are people that have been, around a fence, and maybe they don't see a feeding hole or something like that, where they put food through, and all a tiger has to do is just reach out and grab with its claws. And once it sinks in, pulls the arm through, you can lose an arm and get severe injuries, and you're fighting back, and it thinks, oh, well, it's a tug of war. It's just that split second lack of awareness, even in a situation where you may be familiar, things can go south very quickly. And that happens quite a bit in zoos where people aren't necessarily paying close attention, or maybe people forget to lock the door and the tiger comes out. Right. So even if you are around tigers, even if you have a lot of experience, like, oh, well, I know tigers. I do this every day. It's easy just to, your baseline shifts of what is normal. Right. And so people can lose focus. They can lose respect and appreciation for what they're dealing with. Right. That's
kind of let their guard down
and
just, it's just like, I've been dealing with this tiger for all these years. It's fine. And it's like, I don't know, it's still a tiger.
It's like going back to the driving example, when you're so nervous driving, and then all of a sudden, you're driving every day, and you start eating food in the car, maybe texting. because you're just so used to it. It doesn't necessarily seem dangerous anymore, but you're still driving this multi-ton vehicle.
Yeah.
It's very dangerous.
Yeah, high speeds on the highway or something like that. I
Yeah.
mean, anything could happen, right? So
A lot of accidents occur when people just aren't paying attention or a little bit careless or speeding too much. And
yeah,
it's the same thing with dealing with any kind of dangerous situation. If you approach it too casually, then that's when bad things happen.
yeah. I love what you said about the baseline moving. Is like, maybe you start at a place of they're very dangerous. I got to be very careful to. After a certain period of time, you're like, oh, I'm a little more comfortable now. I'm not as concerned. Or I think, like you said, maybe you kind of lose the respect for how dangerous tigers can really be. I think that was evident in the Tiger King documentary when I know one of the works, I think she like lost her arm or something when she was feeding the tiger. But I'm sure there's other reasons for the tiger being a little aggressive in captivity there. It didn't seem like they were treated in the best conditions.
Yeah. That's unfortunately, it's a common problem in the U.S. with these ramshackle zoos, and the tigers have a lot of very complex requirements and understanding of their needs. And you do have some tigers that are well taken care of in captivity, but that seems to be the exception more than the rule.
Right.
Yeah.
Because like more so like, there's like zoos that have like conservation efforts that actually respect and take care of tigers, and then there's like obviously the dark side of it. That's just, it's like a roadside zoo where it's like a tiger in a cage, like chained up just for you to see, and it's just, anyways.
Yeah, and you have places in Southeast Asia which do photo ops with tigers, and
I've heard, they like
vast majority of cases. I'm not sure there's any kind of really reputable places that really are doing it for conservation.
Right.
I think it's kind of use your judgment, I guess, if you're looking at these kinds of places, because they'll often say, oh, we're doing this conservation work and we're protecting tigers in the wild. Kind of have to approach it with some kind of skepticism. If you see it and your brain's telling you, this might be a little too good to be true.
Yeah.
Chances are that might be the case.
Right.
And so I guess people doing their own research and really having a degree of skepticism, I think, is important.
Right.
Because there's a lot of tigers in captivity. Probably the majority of them aren't very well taken care of.
Right.
It's important to support the places that do actually
100%,
really care for them and contribute to conservation in the wild.
Right. So obviously with efforts of tiger conservation in areas where there's maybe a dense population of people, they can obviously be a threat, or as we were talking about, very deadly to people. How do you kind of balance finding a way to make communities comfortable while trying to focus on tiger conservation and I guess ensuring their safety, knowing how deadly they can be to communities and locals, while also finding ways to have them support the cause and not say, this is going to put us at danger. We don't want anything to do with this. We don't want to support it. I know early on we talked about how it can be a little more difficult because people are kind of afraid of tigers and the misconception. So how do you find that balance of like, I guess educating them on the importance of tigers, but also having them not be against the conservation efforts, with obviously fear at the top of their mind.
A great deal of tiger conservation support is from countries that don't have tigers. So places like in Europe and North America,
right?
Organizations are wanting to support projects in tiger range countries. But you bring up an interesting point where people are having to live with tigers. And it's easy for someone that is not living with a tiger to say, oh, well, we should protect tigers,
of course,
and maybe not necessarily understand what it's like to live with that risk. Ultimately, well, going back, historically, the approach to conservation has been very, very exclusionary. It's been about setting up protected areas and excluding local people. And that doesn't work. Ultimately, the people living there are the stewards of their environment. Right. And they're the ones that are going to dictate whether conservation is successful or not. If they're not getting any kind of benefit from protection of tigers or other species, you can't expect that to continue long term.
Right. So they support that. And
conservation organizations historically have made mistakes of excluding local people when really they are the most important stakeholders for conservation efforts. So it's not necessarily about parachuting in and telling people what to do or how to feel about tigers or anything like that. It's not something that should be top down. It should be something that's bottom up, that's very grassroots driven.
Right.
People living in local communities have to be part and parcel of any kind of conservation solution. And so thankfully nowadays organizations are understanding that, and it's less about going in and putting money into a certain into a protected area where you're training rangers to catch local people or things like that. It's more holistic, where it's trying to build local capacity long term. So it's building park capacity to develop management plans. It's about ensuring that there's a good relationship between protected areas and people.
Right.
And that kind of approach has had quite good success in certain areas. So there's places like in Nepal where you have protected areas where tigers are breeding and expanding their territory. And some of that territory is outside the protected areas in community managed areas. And where people are able to manage their own forests and to feel like they're benefiting from tigers being there, that you're starting to see success in terms of tigers not only moving through those areas, but actually becoming resident in those areas and breeding. So when you have that approach of making sure people are benefiting from conservation, that's something that's going to be bringing long-term success rather than just a foreigner coming in and telling people what to do.
Right.
Which makes sense.
Yeah.
I think that's something that anyone can understand because tigers are very dangerous. And if you're a local person living with tigers, is it really worth it to you that tigers are conserved there? It's like, oh, well, this is just some Westerners. They like these animals, so why should I care?
When they're all the way on the other side of the world, and I'm the one at risk living next door to them. Yeah, for sure.
So it's like the first thing you have to do is understand what the situation like is on the ground, how people perceive tigers, why have tigers survived up until now? What are the threats? Where are the threats coming from? What are the driving forces behind the risk to tigers and the relationship? What's the relationship between tigers and local communities? Is that something that could be improved? Just the basic level of understanding what the situation is rather than having a preconceived notion of what to do, I think is critically important. That leads to more long-term success. And if people feel like they are getting a benefit from the conservation of tigers, and you're more likely to have conservation success. So there's tour operators, for example, in India, where they want to minimize the impact on the forest. They want to work with local communities. They might employ local people as guides.
Right.
And you have tiger tourism that is more sustainable, that is bringing money into local communities. So they are getting a direct benefit, and local people are being employed by some of these operators and working with the national parks. So that's something that's more beneficial to them and more sustainable. It depends on the circumstance. It's you can't just say one size fits all for
sure.
Every tiger range country, for every local village. People's perceptions of tigers are going to differ. And yeah, it's important to understand that, because we can't conserve tigers long term if we don't have that local support and local people being involved in benefiting from conservation.
Right. Oh, I was actually going to ask you, like, what are the benefits for the communities? But you answered that, kind of more jobs, more money into the communities, which is great.
It depends on how it's handled. It has to be very intentional, right? So just the fact that there's tiger tourism or people coming in, it doesn't necessarily translate to people deriving benefit from tigers and tourism. It has to be structured in a way that people are receiving direct benefit. So where's the money going? Is the money going to certain people, certain businesses, or is it more collaborative? Or gate fees for protected areas? Are they going to the people working in local communities? Things like that. So it's context dependent, and people have to be benefiting from things that are going on. If they feel left out, they feel like it's just a bunch of foreigners coming in, telling people what to do or keeping people out, that's not going to work.
Right. And also just, the idea of, like, I'm the one being put at risk here. Well, you guys are reaping all the benefits and rewards. Like, why does this make sense?
Yeah. And put yourself in the mind of someone living in those communities where, you have a family, you're trying to raise your kids, you want the best for your family. you may not see any kind of direct benefit. And why would you want to conserve something that's a risk to you like that?
For sure, your kids.
If you're not getting
livestock, if you have livestock,
Right.
Like
any parent would want to protect their kids.
100%.
So understanding the situation and empowering local people to do that work, and empowering local people to achieve their own goals as individuals and as communities, linking that with conservation is the way to go. Unfortunately, it's taken us a long time to
Figure that
really
out,
understand that. But that in those situations, conservation is a lot more successful.
Right.
And that's something important to keep in mind. It's probably the most important part about conservation is making sure it's inclusive and not that kind of exclusionary approach that has been in the past.
I also love how you said it was like more of a grassroots thing instead of like a top-down, like, this is what we want, so we're just going to do it. It's like, let's work with the local communities that are actually literally neighbors with these areas and these tigers and are going to be dealing with them, hopefully not on a daily basis, but there's obviously the risk that they come through their communities.
It's more sustainable that way too.
Yeah.
So if people feel like, they're able to do things on their own. In Thailand, we had civil society organizations that we helped support that would deal with human-elephant conflict, for example.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just a foreign organization coming in and saying, hey, we're going to do all this work for you, because funding is fickle. It's
right.
Especially now. I mean, everything's uncertain. So things can change, and then all of a sudden, all the progress you made is ruined. But if you invest in the ability for local people to protect things that are important to them, so to protect their livestock, their crops, their livelihoods, have a sustainable future, that's something that's going to be more sustainable long term.
For sure. On that note, I do want to ask you, because it seems like, like you said, we kind of made strides over the years of conservation efforts. Are you optimistic about the future of tigers, or would you say you're more pessimistic? Do you think we're headed in a good direction? I know for a while, they still are endangered, but I know the numbers, as I said earlier, the numbers have been going up fairly steadily. Correct me if I'm wrong, but there's still obviously issues of, like you said, maybe some communities aren't so keen on conservation efforts. And obviously poaching, even if there are laws against it, some people kind of weigh the risk to reward and think it's worth it to go out there and like you said, for medicine and whatever else poachers are looking for. How are you feeling about the future of tigers all over the world?
So I feel like tigers have been at a crossroads, especially recently. You do have very inspiring examples of success in certain areas.
Yeah.
I mentioned some like in India, Nepal, Bhutan. There are signs that conservation can be successful. You have areas where tigers are increasing.
Yeah.
It's complicated because India has the most tigers. They have about 3,000 tigers. It's the majority of the tiger population remaining in the wild. So any increase there is going to dwarf any kind of small populations you have elsewhere.
Right.
But like I said before, it's important to make sure that tigers across the range are protected, not just in one area.
Right.
Not all your eggs in one basket. That you maintain the diversity of tigers throughout the tiger range, because again, it's difficult to reintroduce them back in the wild.
Right.
You have had losses of tigers in Southeast Asia. You've had declines in other places like Malaysia and Indonesia. And the tiger's prospects for survival long-term is never set in stone. We've made some progress, but it's sort of, you have this duality of tiger conservation where you have successes in some areas, you have wholesale losses in others.
Right.
And so it's important to really take a holistic perspective on where we're at with tigers. We do know generally how we can conserve them. We're a lot more knowledgeable than we have been in the past, but it's going to be very difficult. Human populations are continuing to increase.
Right.
You have pretty soon, I think, the most number of people on Earth in a single country in India, which has the most tigers. So you're going to hit a point where the needs of people may conflict with the prospects of conserving tigers. People need land, they need food, they need water.
Right.
And so there's going to be a lot more pressure on remaining tiger habitat as countries do develop. So that's something that's going to be quite uncertain. But I think the fact that we are able to see this ahead of time, it gives us an opportunity to frame development at large scales in a way that is going to be benefiting not just tigers, but for wildlife in general. It's not just protecting about a single species, it's protecting the ecosystem in general and what that ecosystem can provide. So things like water and other resources and tourism and things like that. It's important for countries to commit to development that's going to be friendly to environment, to protected areas and to sustaining wildlife, and the ability for wildlife to move from one area to another.
Right.
So rather than say building a highway that goes straight through tiger habitat or between tiger habitat that's just going to sever that corridor, either rerouting it or having wildlife crossing structures, things like that, just very small investments that could make a really powerful long-term difference is important going forward. It's going to be complicated, but we need to be able to have commitments from countries to protect tigers and protect other species, so that it's the conservation successes so far are going to be sustained. It's going to be a challenge, but so I don't know if that really answers your question. I'm optimistic in some regards because we have had some of those successes, but we shouldn't forget that tigers are being lost elsewhere.
Right.
And the situation can change so quickly, whether you have a disease outbreak or a poaching outbreak.
Natural disaster, like you were saying, like if all your eggs are in one basket, something happens,
Something, so in India, there have been cases of rapid increases in poaching.
Yeah.
And tigers being wiped out from certain areas. So not being complacent is very important. Maintaining vigilance and having a sustainable conservation system where local people are involved in protected areas, and managers have the ability to go out on patrol and work with local communities, and they have the tools and equipment to succeed. That's going to be really important. But it's we don't know. It's sort of we're at a crossroads at this point.
Like it's not just like a linear tiger numbers are going up, so we're all good. There's a lot of factors that are kind of in play that.
Successes should be celebrated, and we should be learning from those.
For sure.
We should also be learning from some of the shortcomings and some of the failures that we've had in conservation, and how we can prevent that from happening in the future.
All right, well, before we wrap up, for the audience to know, what are some actionable steps that they can do today to support tiger conservation?
I think probably the most immediate thing that people can do is don't buy any kind of tiger products, which seems kind of intuitive to us, but it's something that's very important. Tigers are still being poached for their body parts, and so it's important not to support that kind of trade. No tiger parts you're going to see anywhere is going to be legal to buy. So never buy tiger products. Support conservation organizations that are actually working on the ground, and especially those that are working with local people. Don't support the tiger trade. Also, be aware of tiger conservation and things that are happening with tigers. Try and learn as much as possible. The thing that I did first was I just started learning about tigers and learning about the current situation, which conservation organizations are working in certain areas, which ones that are doing great work that I would want to support. I think just learning about tigers and I guess just using your time to understand more about them and their situation is really important.
Yeah.
And if there's anything that might hurt tigers, so if you're buying products that potentially is resulting in environmental degradation in tiger range countries, know where your products are coming from. So your timber, your coffee, things like that, or oil palm, even so-called sustainable oil palm. Avoiding buying products that might be involved in destroying tiger habitat. And also asking your representatives in government to support tiger range countries that maybe don't necessarily have the same resources to protect wildlife as in Western countries. So that would be sort of the main things that I would suggest.
Well, we got to give a huge thank you to Dr. Ash here for joining us today and Where can you let the people know where they could find you? Socials or anything that you want to plug?
Yeah, you can find me Walks with Tigers on X and on Blue Sky.
Walks with Tigers.
Right.
On X and Blue Sky.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Hey, it's a pleasure, man.